What is up, Shadowdarks? It's iGrim Games, and today we're going to have a nice short and sweet update. I have recently released my preview of the Druid class that I'm working on for my next zine. Using my link tree in the description down below, you'll find a link to my newsletter. We got our Druid preview. I don't see anything wrong with this thumbnail, it looks perfect. In this article, you can get a link to the PDF that will take the Druid from level 1 to 3, kind of like how Kelsey's quick start rules have access for anybody for free to take all the core classes from level 1 to 3. Here's my ridiculous art tease that I sent to the new artist that I'm working with on this particular piece. The Druid here is summoning Call Lightning and zapping this creature. I'm sure it's going to turn out great. I look forward to sharing it with you. I'm using the free version of this newsletter app, so this link might die by the time you see this. No worries. Use my Ko-fi link here, and you can come to my Ko-fi shop, and you'll find the Druid right here. You can download it for free, no issue. This link will exist here on this page at least until the zine actually comes out. Maybe I'll just leave it up there forever. All right, let's actually take a look at the document. All right, this document's 10 pages. A lot of that's because there's a lot of tables associated with it, and it's a full spellcasting class, so it's got the tier 1 and tier 2 spells associated with it. All this content is subject to change. This is an early version, so keep that in mind. I'm still going to probably workshop things for the next several months before the actual full zine drops. Rather than going through every line of this preview, which you of course could read for yourself, I'm going to share some of my highlights. So for the spellcasting, it's comparable to the Priest, where you have a base spell. Like for the Priest, it's Turn Undead. For the Druid, you have Shillelagh, and then it has similar spell growth. So you start with 2 additional tier 1s, just like the Priest does. So the rooted ability gives the Druid class several advantages that you would come to expect. One of the unique ones, perhaps, is how it interacts with wildlife encounters. Looking at page 113 of the Shadowdark core rulebook, right, when you are engaging with often random encounters, you can have the opportunity to roll a reaction check, see how these encounters perceive you and your party. And when dealing with wildlife, Druids will have a better shot of rolling higher on this and maybe escaping hostile interactions. So the way I handle wild shaping for the Druid class in Shadowdark context here is to really put the wild back into it. Rolling on tables is one of the absolute fun things about this system, and embracing the chaos and rolling 3d6 down the line and whatnot. So depending on your level, and you choose to wild shape, you'll roll a d12 to determine what creature you wild shape into. And this advances with every level. It can be very powerful, right? So like when you're at level 3 and you're rolling to roll into a lion, perhaps, that's going to give you multiple attacks, which is very rare to get from the player's perspective. When you wild shape into something, I decided it makes totally sense to me that you would keep your ability to communicate, cast spells, and store your equipment as you would come to expect. So yeah, you turn into a dog or a sting bat or a giant rat, you can still yap. And you can cast spells from that form as well. You can only do this once per day by default, and it lasts for 5 rounds. You take on the HP of the creature and most of its stats and abilities, and once the wild shape expires, you return to your prior hit points. But the major thing that I think makes this much more balanced than in other editions of Dungeons & Dragons is the fact that if you go to 0 while in this wild shape form, you revert back to normal and you are dying. So if you wild shape into a rat and you have 1 HP, oops, you better be careful. But you can also, like at level 1 here, the Badger has 2 attacks that do a d4 and has rage, so that could be a really powerful shape change if you time it correctly in a heated battle. You also have the opportunity to roll lucky, and if you roll an 11, you get to bounce up to a higher table than perhaps what your current level is. As well as if you hit 12, you can choose the outcome. Would I rather take my chances on a higher table, or do I really want to guarantee and set in on a particular monster that I'm wanting in this moment? Of course, at the same token, if you are, let's say, level 2 and you roll a 1, okay, you might get downgraded to the prior table. Now, a lot of these forms might not seem like what you would always expect a Druid to transform into. Yeah, sure, of course, a Druid might transform into a badger or a cobra or a wolf or something, or like a boar or a giant spider. But what I often do with my work is I try to keep it referring back to just the core Shadowdark rulebook rather than a plethora of different whether it be Curse Scrolls, zines, or other third-party work. I want my baseline form of the Druid to be entirely playable if a player has, yes, my zine, but also the core rulebook, and doesn't have to worry about having other outside sources. Maybe over time in a further zine, I might expand upon this and have a bunch of my own creatures, but for this time, trying to keep it as easy as possible right there in that Shadowdark core rulebook. There is a possibility to get additional uses of Wild Shape, but it's pretty rare on the talent table. You have to roll Snake Eyes or choose it from Boxcars. And also for Wild Shape forms, if you roll a 3 through 6 at some point in your character's career, you can gain the ability to essentially roll twice and choose one of the outcomes. So that gives you a little bit more focusing in, a little bit more taming of the chaos, but still chaos nonetheless. We also have Druid Mishaps for rolling a critical failure on your spellcasting check. Some of these are pretty comparable to what you find in the core rules, as well as many third-party works, like, you know, the top one making you roll twice and take both results, or like Mana Drain here, losing the ability to cast the spell for an extended period of time. Some fun ones that are unique, I really like Rampant Growth here. You become a tree and then constantly emanate the Entangle spell further and further around you, and of course we'll show you the Entangle spell here shortly. Also like Tainted Leyline, you know, like you're tapping into the primal energies of the earth, but some of that's corrupted by demonic forces and you accidentally summon a bunch of demons to fight you. I imagine my higher level mishap tables will have some evolution of this. The Dretch demon are the like level 2 low level demons. So yeah, we'll have some scaling with that theme, I think. We have some play with Wild Shape, a couple of those. So Consuming Instinct, you Wild Shape into something and then attack randomly. Kind of a confusion effect in that sense. I like Devolution, where you also Wild Shape into the rat and you're just, you know, SOL. I was debating on whether to make this the jellyfish, and so you're just like stuck there on land as a jellyfish, but you know, at least am I not merciful? I'll allow you to move around and, you know, bite something. All right, let's take a look at those spells. So we have the tier 1 and tier 2, which you'd be able to access with this trial version, getting to level 3 character. Animal Speak is pretty straightforward. You can communicate with wildlife. Barkskin, armor buff spell, you can cast it on yourself or others, right, at close range. Barkskin, basically a buff to chainmail. This class is restricted to leather armor in the book. That's because most druids that I used to play growing up, you couldn't use metal armor, and this is a kind of a nod to that. Charm Animal is essentially Charm Person, but wildlife. Entangle is a focus spell. This is a nice crowd control. So you cast it on a target, everything close to that target, adjacent to that target also gets affected. Flame Blade is like an equivalent melee version of Acid Arrow in a way. So when you cast it, you strike for 1d8 fire damage, but because it's a focus spell, each time you maintain it, you also get to freely whack something next to you with 1d8. And that part is simply a multitask, so this effectively allows you to hit with that for free, 1d8, again, maintaining focus, and then swipe with another physical attack, maybe a club that you have Shillelagh on. I'll jump to Shillelagh real quick. So you can put that on a club or staff. It makes it a magic weapon, but not with a modifier, just a +0 magic weapon. And because a staff and club are 1d4s, it upgrades it to a d6 and gives you advantage on that damage roll. So netting you on average like a higher probability of achieving a higher amount on that d6. A lot of focus spells here, as you can see on this page, but Fog as a tier 2 spell, again, gives you some long range, Fog of War, Smoke Screen, you know, Smoke Grenade, whatever you want to call it, and allows you to move it. So, you know, again, gives you some utility there. I really like my take on Goodberry, so I've rolled this into the Torch Timer mechanic, and, you know, in terms of like balancing, you must transmutate like a ration that you have to get the 1d4 magical berries. It does give this class a healing component, but very limited. So you can, you know, chew on a berry, get that 1 hit point. If you have a friend or ally that goes goes down, goes unconscious, you can use an action to feed it, crunch it in their jaws there, boom, they get healed. And but these berries wither away in an hour of real time, so that way you can't just, I'm going to buy a crap ton of rations, turn them all into good berries, and then just have an arsenal of those in reserve. There is some time limitation on these items, but a really nice, I think, low-level cure spell, or at least something that keeps you up, right? Gust of Wind gives you a nice AoE to push a bunch of targets into objects and take damage, or maybe make them fall off a ledge or something. Produce Flame, also another spell rolling into the torch timer. You make that hand burn with magic fire, and then it functions as a torch, but also before that spell expires, you can throw it as a ranged attack for a D4. So you get a torch with some extra steps there. Spider Climb functions as you pretty much expect. And the classic warp wood, so you can take a near-sized cube and twist, bend, warp wood, obstruct things, or make barriers a lot easier to get through. So a lot of the classic hits from the historic Druid represented in Shadowdark form. You'll have some tough choices with the spell growth path, but also I've added in the rare outcome as well. There is an opportunity to get additional Druid spells by rolling a 2 or again a 12 and choosing to. But you're also having to choose between, do I want that extra wild shape or do I want an extra spell? So I think those are fair, tough choices on that talent table. As you can see, I forgot to create titles for it, so maybe for now, just take inspiration from some of the, either the neutral wizard, even though Druid's here at the end, take some inspiration from the neutral column for wizard, maybe from priest or something, and that should suffice for now. Well, that about does it for me today. Feel free to smash the like, hit subscribe, comment down below what was your favorite thing you saw today on my Druid class. What would you like to see as it expands into the higher levels? And be sure to check out my shop where you can find my past works, as well as pick up your copy of the free beta Druid class today. Give it a run at your table. Love to hear how it goes. Thank you so much for watching, and may all your torches never go out.